In Venezuela, the integral defense bodies of the states of La Guaira and Carabobo were activated by order of President Nicolás Maduro as part of a civic military system to guarantee peace and territorial activity. In Ecuador, indigenous student and social organizations rejected discriminatory and repressive treatment by President Noboa's government. And in Egypt, the Palestinian resistance movement, Hamas, reiterates that it demands guarantees in the light of the ambiguity of Washington's proposals and the conduct of Zionism. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Wednesday in Venezuela, the integral defense bodies of the states of La Guaira and Carabobo were activated by order of the President Nicolás Maduro as part of a civic military system to guarantee peace and territorial security. The Minister of the Popular Power for Interior, Justice and Peace, Diosdado Cabello, led the activation of the direction of bodies for integral defense. This activity is being carried out within the framework of the Independence 200 plan, launched to ratify Venezuela's sovereignty in the face of provocations and threats by U.S. imperialism. The event was attended by the governor of the state of La Guaira, José Alejandro Terán, state military forces, firefighters, and police forces. The formation of a civic military police unit deployed throughout the Venezuelan territory aims to resist attacks against the sovereignty of the nation. Since 2017, the popular power has been a key part of the national defense strategy. And also in Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro stated the country's intelligence services managed to gather the names of those involved in the attempted attack on the U.S. Embassy in Caracas and claimed that they all reside in the United States. President Maduro reported that the United States ambassador to Colombia, John McNamara, was notified this Monday about the attacks that were intended to be carried out against the U.S. Embassy in Caracas. He emphasized that all the details of those involved in this terrorist act, which was thwarted and failed thanks to the Venezuelan police intelligence, were provided. The Venezuelan leader warned that this attempted aggression sought to provoke an incident to justify a new escalation of aggression against the country. Furthermore, the head of state denounced the false information spread by Washington, which claimed not to have communication channels with Caracas. And in the United States, the Democratic Party accused President Donald Trump and his Secretary of State Marco Rubio of seeking war and a change of government in Venezuela following their decision to cut diplomatic ties with the South American country. Through their social media accounts, Democrats on the House Foreign Affairs Committee declared that the U.S. people do not want another war and that Congress should not allow any president to start an illegal or unilateral conflict. The Democratic Party statements add to the growing international rejection of the United States military deployment in the Caribbean Sea, considered a threat that undermines the territorial sovereignty of all the peoples of the region. It should be noted that the Venezuelan government has denied the Trump administration's accusations against Venezuela, reiterating that the country is a drug-free territory and denouncing Washington's intentions to appropriate Venezuelan resources. A recent Nobel Prize winner John Clark of University of California, Berkeley, stated that the Trump administration move to cut federal funding for scientific research will paralyze science and be disastrous. Let's listen to what he said.
But this is going to cripple science, and it is going to be disastrous. And if this continues, assuming that the present administration finally comes to an end, it may take a decade to get back to where we were, say, half a year ago. For example, Michelle and John and I had no way of understanding the importance of this effect that actually led to our Nobel Prize. If you'd asked us 40 years ago, we would have said, well, yeah, it's an interesting thing. We're glad to have done this and we understand it, and move on. And you just don't know how it's going to evolve because other people will pick up on the idea and develop it. Well, I received a phone call at 2 my morning, and I thought, well, this is obviously a joke call and maybe I shouldn't bother to answer it. But in the end, I decided to pick up the phone, and then a voice from Sweden introduced himself and said that he was calling to congratulate me that I had shared the 2005 Nobel Prize in Physics.
And Nobel Prize winner in medicine Mary Brunkoff held a press conference at the Institute for Systems Biology, where she warned that cuts in U.S. scientific funding threaten research and innovation.
Mary did three things. One, she really validated the idea, the power of genomics and genetics. I think, two, she demonstrated beautifully how powerful team science can be in putting together all the different people. But she, of course, had to apply a systems approach and bring it all together. But finally, she made a discovery that really transformed a fundamental aspect of modern immunology.
Well, it is true that federal funding has been incredibly important for, promoting and supporting science. And certainly at ISB, the majority, I would say, the majority of the work that we do here is supported by federal funding. So obviously any loss in that hurts.
And U.S. President Donald Trump welcomed Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney to the White House for their second meeting since April. The 60-year-old former banker seeks to restore bilateral relations and convince Trump to ease U.S. tariffs that are negatively impacting Canada's economy. The conversation focused on trade, security, the future of the United States-Mexico-Canada trade agreement, and also the situation in the Gaza Strip. We have a short break coming up. First, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. The indigenous, student, and social organizations of Ecuador once again rejected discriminatory and repressive treatment by President Noboa's government toward a legitimate struggle for their rights. At the close of the 16th day of the national strike and widespread mobilizations, the number of arbitrary detentions, threats, and state violence continues to escalate. Citizens gathered at the Casa del Pueblo Quito-Cara in Quito, the nation's capital, have held a peaceful sitting to denounce the disproportionate use of force. Likewise, in other provinces, activities are being organized to demand that the government pursue dialogue and release the detainees, that they will not abandon, reaffirming that they will not abandon their demands.
We demand the immediate release of our brothers imprisoned in Ecuador during this national strike. Comrades, we also demand an end to criminalization and an end to the attacks on our struggles. We have been accused of being terrorists, saboteurs, and drug traffickers. Comrades, no more criminalization of our fellow fighters in the country, especially in the canton of Otavalo, in the province of Imbabura. Comrades, in order to end this struggle, this abuse, comrades, they will have to immediately release our imprisoned brothers.
And in Peru, the recent appointment of the national prosecutor has been criticized by experts who believe that there will be a setback in the fight against corruption and a weakening of investigations that compromise the presidential environment and the governing coalition. Miguel Angulo has the details.
La designación de Tomás Gálvez como fiscal de la nación.
The appointment of Tomás Gálvez as national prosecutor will serve the interests of the current government and the coalition that supports it in power, various experts warn.
¿Qué duda existe en el país de que la designación
There is no doubt in the country that the appointment of Tomás Galvez by the Board of Supreme Prosecutors as national prosecutor constitutes a serious blow to the country's institutions, or what little remains of them, and in particular to the little that it meant that the public prosecutor's office constituted a kind of reserve of legality in the nation? Because, as we all know, this man, Tomás Galvez, is the subject of serious questioning due to his direct or indirect links to a criminal organization, known as the white-collar criminals of the port.
organización criminal denominada los Cuellos Blancos del Puerto.
Galvez ha anunciado que planteará
Galvez has announced that he will propose the elimination of the special prosecutors teams that have investigated corruption by Obrecht, former presidents, and senior officials of the current government.
Los equipos de fiscales, como hemos
As we have seen in recent years, prosecutors' teams have served to bring to trial and convict high-ranking figures in national politics for their connections with Odebrecht, for example. However, now the gentleman is filling his mouth with nonsense, saying that what the prosecutors' teams have done is criminalize politics and unduly persecute certain political figures when their responsibilities have been proven.
cuando las responsabilidades están acreditadas.
Recientemente cambió a 3 fiscales
He
supremos.
recently replaced 3 Supreme prosecutors investigating cases involving Prime Minister Eduardo Arena and former ministers Juan José Santibanez and Julio de Martini, and one of his first actions was to visit the President of Congress, Juan José Ager, whom he exonerated from a sexual assault charge.
Sexual.
Fue el primer, no hay que olvidar esto, fue el primer
He was the first, let us not forget this, he was the first Attorney General of the nation
elegido al Congreso de la República, no
who immediately after being elected to the Congress of the Republic, did not only receive applause from the various political parties, but also to jointly propose a reform of the justice system.
sistema de justicia, ¿no? Y eso es lo grave porque
And that is serious because Mr. Galvez does not have the personal or ethical qualities to do the job.
las condiciones personales ni éticas para hacerlo.
En una reciente sesión de la Comisión de
At a
Reforma
recent
de la
session of the
Justicia,
Justice System Reform Commission, Galvez stated that he will not tolerate abuses against members of parliament, despite the fact that there are approximately 70 who are currently under investigation.
Creo que es importante en nuestro país que podamos revertir.
I believe it is important in our country that we are able to reverse all of this and provide guarantees to citizens that the various authorities are being monitored.
Las autoridades que tienen, porque el hecho de señalar ese tipo
Because pointing out these kinds of things or raising these kinds of concepts or proposals clearly indicates that some people have privileges and others do not.
que tienen privilegios y otros no, como la población que sale a la
Like the people who take to the streets, and we are seeing that a young man is already in jail on preventive detention with a whole hassle of a process. And I believe that there cannot be a double standard.
borroso. Y creo que no puede haber un doble rasero.
para los entrevistados, su designación genera
For those
más
interviewed,
inestabilidad,
his appointment creates more instability, promotes impunity, and is part of the governing coalition's plan to institutionally co-opt the country in an attempt to remain in power.
perpetuarse en el poder. Desde Lima para Telesur, Ramiro Angulo Maquiavelo.
Organizations affiliated with the Solidarity Network with Cuba sent a shipment of eye surgery kits and medications to the embassy. The donation is a part of a solidarity program with the Cuban people who are suffering due to the U.S.-imposed criminal economic blockade. Representatives of the organizations in attendance reiterated their support for the Cuban government during the donation delivery, pointing out that, contrary to what the U.S. government would have us believe, Cuba only exports medical professionals and not bombs. These contributions are a part of the humanitarian cooperation between the two nations and are part of the Misión Milagro program, which is a joint project between Cuba and Venezuela that aims to provide low-income individuals with free ophthalmological surgeries. And the United Nations Security Council has approved a resolution to establish a new gun suppression force, the GSF, in Haiti, with a maximum deployment of 5,550 police officers and soldiers. This decision aims to replace and correct the understaffing of the previous mission, which managed to deploy only around 1,000 officers. The GSF is 5 times larger and carries a more offensive and decisive mandate to confront the security crisis. It would operate for an initial period of 12 months with the goal of restoring a basic level of security in the Caribbean nation. Civil rights groups affirm that these interventions, far from improving the country's insecurity crisis, actually worsen it. We now have our second break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. A final break, don't go away. Welcome back. A few hours before a new round of talks begins in Egypt with officials from Qatar and the United States, the Palestinian resistance reiterates that it demands guarantees in light of the ambiguity of Washington's proposals and the conduct of Zionism. One of Hamas senior officials, Fawzi Barhoum, has confirmed that they want an end to the genocidal war, but the experience of all the negotiations violated by Israel makes them demand guarantees on fundamental points. Barhoum explained that regarding the withdrawal of troops, everything is very ambiguous and vague, and that there is not even a specific timetable. On the other hand, and on the eve of this new meeting, resistance groups confirmed that no one has the right to surrender the weapons of the Palestinian people. And the Israeli regime illegally intercepted on Wednesday vessels of the Freedom Flotilla and thousands Matlins that carry supplies, medicine and food to the people of Gaza. Netanyahu's naval forces raid represent a blatant violation of the agreements on international waters established by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. On its X account, the Summit Flotilla warns of the encirclement by at least 8 Israeli ships and the detention of 2 of its boats, while condemning the airstrike perpetrated against the Conscience vessel, which has 93 journalists, doctors on board. According to the activists, the make of food and basic care supplies are worth more than $110,000. The Freedom Flotilla coalition aims to challenge the genocidal blockade of the Israeli Zionist regime and establish themselves as active defenders of the legitimate cause of the Palestinian people. And the Israeli regime intensified its drone attacks on the border of town of Hula in southern Lebanon. An Israeli unmanned vehicle launched 4 consecutive attacks on the city in the early hours of Tuesday morning. The offensive began with a sound cannon but quickly escalated with the launch of a missile targeted specifically at a local cafe. The drone then returned to carry out 3 additional bombings, although no fatalities were reported. The offensive caused significant material damage and spread panic among the residents of Hula. Local sources confirmed that the Lebanese resistance remains on alert, monitoring Israeli movements and responding to aggressions on the southern border. And Russia reported 3 fatalities and 10 injuries after a Ukrainian missile attack on civilian infrastructure in the province of Belgorod. The attack took place on Wednesday morning in the town of Mastulova, Pristan, and according to the local governor, Vyacheslav Gladkov, 7 of the victims of the attack have already been hospitalized. This attack comes after President Vladimir Putin publicly denounced Ukraine's attempts to attack peaceful targets on the territory of the Federation. The president stated that these attacks will be of no use and reiterated that the priority task is to guarantee the safety of citizens and the civil and strategic infrastructure of the country. Hurricane Priscilla, which reached Category 2 strength off the Pacific coast of Mexico, poses a serious threat of heavy rains for several states in the country, especially Hidalgo. Although the natural phenomenon will not directly impact the land, the National Meteorological Service forecasts that Priscilla will generate torrential rains in the central eastern parts of Mexico over the next few hours. In this regard, Governor of Hidalgo, Julio Menchaca Salazar, confirmed that some regions will be indirectly affected. According to the Meteorological Service, Venezuela is expected to bring torrential rains of between 150 and 250 millimeters to northeast Hidalgo, as well as to northern Querétaro, and very heavy rains to states such as Tamaulipas, Oaxaca, Chiapas, and Tabasco. And in El Salvador, an environmental organization and communities in the coastal area are working on a conservation project for hawksbill sea turtles and endangered species. Our correspondent, Roberto Hugo Presa, has all the details.
El Pacífico salvadoreño es el escenario de un
The Salvadoran Pacific is the setting for a life project for the hawksbill sea turtle, a species critically endangered worldwide, which here in Jiquilisco Bay on the eastern coast refuses to die out. ProCosti is a foundation that seeks to reduce the threats facing endangered species, and that is why they work here.
Nace gracias a un esfuerzo regional.
The Eastern Pacific Hawksbill Initiative was created thanks to a regional effort in 2007. The important nesting sites of this species were unknown, and as a result, research is being conducted throughout the Eastern Pacific, where two important sites have been identified: in Nicaragua, the Padre Ramos Estuary, and in El Salvador, Jiquilisco Bay.
Y en El Salvador, la bahía de Jiquilisco.
En esta región, cientos de tortugas.
In this region, hundreds of turtles come to the sand to nest and lay their eggs, which they then cover to protect them.
En el pasado, eran los pobladores de la zona quienes recogían los huevos para vender.
In the past, the local population would collect the eggs to sell them, which is punishable by law, but now the guardians of the foundation take them to the incubator.
Los resultados han sido muy importantes. En el 2008,
the results have been very significant. In 2008, we started with a record of just over 200 hawksbill turtle nests, and in 2024, we achieved significant figures for the preservation and conservation of this species at the regional level, registering more than 600 hawksbill turtle nests.
Registrando más de 600 nidos de tortuga carey.
Hacerle así porque si no, al empezar a escarbar siempre la arena me vuelve a aterrar aquí.
Técnicos y colaboradores que son pobladores de las comunidades costeras.
Technicians and collaborators, who are residents of the coastal communities, monitor the entire process of searching for, collecting eggs, incubating, and releasing these little turtles as they begin their journey through the ocean to grow up.
Estamos pendiente de alguna llamada de
We are waiting for calls from communities that find sea turtle nests, and they also report when they find sick or dead turtles.
Informan cuando encuentran tortugas enfermas o muertas. Hacemos actividades como monitoreo.
We do activities such as aquatic monitoring, some tours, and we have to nurseries.
Y contamos con 2 viveros.
Unas 130 familias de 7 comunidades.
Approximately 130 families from 7 communities have benefited from this natural conservation project, which generates employment and improves their living conditions.
Perhaps
in the past we did not have the knowledge to protect species or understand their value, and we did not give them much importance.
No le damos cierta importancia. Ahora que sabemos el valor y lo hemos...
Now that we know their value and have been able to get more involved in hawksbill turtle projects, we have been able to learn and appreciate what we have, what is part of the ecosystem.
Lo que tenemos, lo que del ecosistema se le inculca también a la
It is also instilled in the family so that they know how to take care of all of nature's species.
toda la especie de la naturaleza.
La tortuga de Carabobo corre un grave riesgo.
The hawksbill sea turtle is at serious risk worldwide due to the illegal trade of its shells for use in jewelry, the consumption of its eggs, pollution, and habitat loss.
Pérdida de su hábitat. Roberto Hugo Presa, teleSUR, El Salvador.
With this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media: Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. With Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.